This is a national problem, and it's not just a police problem. This is a problem that impacts families, it impacts businesses, it impacts job growth, future employment. I'm not going to ask for a showing of hands, but I would imagine if I did ask how many people in here have been impacted by your family or loved ones from substance abuse, probably the majority of this room would raise your hands, including me. I've dealt with it in my own family with one of my children. And if you look at this, 33% of our kids are mixing alcohol and prescription drugs. Alcohol still remains our #1 illegal substance that our kids are using underage. And you're seeing some fluctuations in where they're getting it, but take a look at how many of them are getting it at home. The gateway, from all the studies that we're seeing for heroin, is prescription drug use first. And what's going on is the dealers are getting the kids hooked on prescription drugs, or the kids are getting hooked themselves on prescription drugs, and most of the time they're getting it at home, out of medicine cabinets. They start using prescription drugs. Now, heroin is cheaper on the black market than trying to buy and trying to get prescription drugs on the black market. It's easier to conceal. The trends that we see are runners that come out and the kids are getting on their cell phones. They're given a number to send a text. They send a text message, ordering up on the cell phone, goes to a guy with one of these throwaway cell phones. They show up, most of the time from outside of the Gilbert area, bring their drugs in, they'll pull up to a parking lot, exchange, and the kids have their drugs. They're not getting it at school. Most of these kids are getting it outside of the school market, but they're getting hooked up with somebody to deliver the drugs to them through contacts in schools.
On the documentary that ASU put together, one of the connections they were trying to make was the very short distance between the prescription drugs that are in your medicine cabinet at home and the drug cartels in Mexico. We typically think of, must be lots of steps in between, right? Well, the chief just said, no, the next step is heroin. And the kids, who were literally kids that were on this documentary, said, once you're on heroin, you got one of two destinations, death or jail.
Drugs, okay? Drugs are the #1 cause of death in children, period. End of story. Whether it's intentional, unintentional, overdose, one or the other. That's what kills more kids than anything else. Prefrontal cortex. We all have, well, I've got a teenager now, right? And we sometimes go, what in the heck were you thinking? I use a different word in my house, okay? But what were you thinking, right? They weren't thinking, okay, right? So teenagers and adults, we have a constant balance between prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that reasons, right? Hey, I probably shouldn't do heroin, right? My parents might get a little pissed if I get home and I'm stoned, right? With bionic pupils and barely breathing, right? The amygdala is like, do it. Oh, just do it. It's going to be a lot of fun, right? Kids are going to love you. Woo, party, right? So it's this constant balance. There's something very real called the amygdala hijack. Who remembers Mike Tyson fighting the ear off, right? Who remembers in the British or the World Cup, the soccer player literally headbutt another guy? It's called the amygdala hijack. Kids, when they take drugs, are getting hijacked by their amygdala, right? So you can scream at your kid all day long, say, what are you thinking? They're not. This is more powerful than this. From 2000 to 2010, narcotic prescriptions went up 4 times. In the twin study, 2 sets of twins. One uses marijuana before age 17. The other doesn't use marijuana until after age 17. Remember that soft brain? Kids who use, the twin who uses marijuana before age 17, 4 times more likely to use cocaine abusively. 3 times more likely to use alcohol abusively. 2.5 times more likely to use narcotics abusively. Marijuana is a gateway drug. Heroin's very real. There's heroin in Gilbert and Chandler, right? Heroin is, like I said, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I saw heroin once a month from a junkie, okay, who came in with track marks. I see heroin, not daily, but at least every other day or every third day. And a lot of times in teens or youth, okay, 20, 25. What the stats show is that if you can prevent a kid from getting into narcotics, stimulants. If you can prevent that, them experimenting until they hit college, chances are they won't abuse. I work with my health care, plan to find another pediatric psychiatrist, and I didn't have any luck. So, and there was probably 2 on my plan, but then they weren't taking new patients. But it didn't matter. He was found in a canal, drowned that morning. Drugs were not in his system, but alcohol was. But so you see, drugs and alcohol, I mean, it's intermixed. Finding help was very difficult. Like, if I break my leg, I think I could find 5 good doctors, maybe 3. But it's just like, with the mental health issues, it's not even close. So I think something needs to be done to make it accessible to everybody. And
I eventually ended up dropping out of high school because I wouldn't go to school due to my drug and alcohol addiction. It turned from weed and alcohol to coke and crack, and eventually into meth every day. All of that ended up with me going to prison for 4.5 years. On May 19th, 2015, I was released, and I had the opportunity to go to the John Vulcan Academy, where I was able to transition back into society. Now I have hope. I have dreams. I have goals that I know are in my future.
I wanted to thank you, Jeff. Your story touched me a lot because I felt like I was listening to my dad giving my story, almost word for word. That's the exact story. A little background for me. I'm from Centerville, Utah, right near Salt Lake City. Grew up in a really close family. My mom, dad, younger brother and sister, very close with all of them. Involved in sports, straight A student. Pretty much the perfect child to my parents. In their eyes, the perfect child. I'm extremely grateful to John Vulcan, to everyone here, to the other students, Robbie, for this opportunity that I have. It's been 10 months now, longest I've ever been clean in 10 years, and in 2 more months I get to start college again, go back to school. I'm looking at hopefully transferring to NAU when I'm done here, looking at going into dentistry.
We're glad that we're having this conversation, and because it's also very related to mental health, one of the conversation points that's come out a couple times around our table was maybe some disappointment in the way the community has had conversations in the past about mental health facilities have been proposed in town. And we think that this kind of a conversation and even extending it into that mental health category would be helpful so that we can have a more productive dialogue.
Any way they can get it into their system, they're going to do it. And young man hit it, the nail right on the head when he said, look for those changes in behavior.